Coming up on this episode of the Women's Leadership Mindset Series podcast.
It's not jail. You're not stuck, but we make ourselves feel like it is, right? We've put it out on LinkedIn. We've told all our friends. We were excited about it. We thought it was going to be the thing. And to your point, then you get there and it's just not. And it's hard because you feel like, gosh, why isn't it? And is it, I think a lot of times women end up saying, oh, it must be me, right? But it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that it's not the right fit. And generally, I advise that go ahead and just acknowledge it's not the right fit, but keep doing great work in that position while you're figuring out what the right fit might be, and then work toward that right fit. And we can, it's also an opportunity to go back and revisit the goals if it's not meeting the goals that you had set out, and maybe changing the goals. Maybe you realize that it's not, maybe the job met the goals you listed, but the goals you listed weren't really what feeds your passion. And then it requires changing those a little bit. But it's admitting that it's okay. It's okay to make a mistake, or not even a mistake. I don't like to characterize it that way. It's okay to jump into something that looks good on paper and figure out it's just not for you.
Welcome, leaders, to the Women's Leadership Mindset Series presented by TK Page Enterprises. My name is Teresa Page, and I am your host and looking forward to spending these next few moments with all of you. We have a lot of work to get done on today, but first, allow me to invite you to connect with me by subscribing to my website and to connect and follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and other social media platforms. And always feel free to contact me directly via email or by booking an appointment. So what is our goal? Well, as an author, speaker, coach, and mentor, my mission is to help professional women renew their leadership mindset with fresh fire and purpose through diverse mediums of leadership empowerment solutions and the My Journey to Wholeness book series. However, the Women's Leadership Mindset Series is a new initiative intended to spotlight powerful women leaders and how they serve the world through their professions and purpose. So with a goal to help women realize their unfulfilled dreams and re-energize the leaders they always were, this platform is designed to enhance, empower, educate, equalize, and even emancipate, as our featured guests share their entrepreneurial stories, provide viable resources, and guidance in a caring, professional, and impactful manner. So, let's get down to business. Well, all right, in today's video, it is my pleasure to welcome to my virtual stage Dr. Anne Marie Peters, CEO of AMP Consulting. Dr. Peters is a leadership strategist and a research-backed author of We'll Be Right Back, a forthcoming book for women returning to work after a career pause. Drawing on her PhD research in industrial and organizational psychology, her MBA from Kellogg at Northwestern, and decades of leadership experience, Anne Marie explores the identity, confidence, and leadership questions women face after stepping away from paid work for caregiving, motherhood, burnout, health challenges, or major life transitions. Her work helps women reframe career pauses as chapters that can build clarity, resilience, and renewed leadership capacity. So to connect with Dr. Peters, you may reach her on her website at www.annemariepeters.com. You can also connect with her via email at amp@annemariepeters.com. You may also connect with her on social media via LinkedIn at Anne Marie Peters, and also check out her new book that's coming very soon. We'll be right back. So we'll bring all of this information back before we go. But first, I want to say welcome, Dr. Peters. How are you?
Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so excited about our conversation. I absolutely loved our one-on-one and the passion behind the work that you do, and to be able to support women that are coming back into the workplace. So I'm really excited about our conversation. But before we get into it, I first want to give a quick shout out to Noemi Bears, co-founder of Podcast Connections of Cyprus, Europe, for being responsible for making this connection between the two of us. So, Dr. Peters, let's get down to business. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself beyond the bio?
Sure. I am the proud mother of 3 children, and my husband and I have been happily married for very nearly 37 years, couple weeks away from that. And certainly that's been a strong basis for all of my adult life. My family's my pride and joy, and brand new grandma of a little baby girl. So have to mention that as well. So proud and so excited. I grew up actually in Chicago, and lived there for many years, did all of my schooling there up through graduate work and the first part of my career. And then my husband and I have moved around quite a bit with his work. So lots of exciting new starts for all of us in my family.
Absolutely. And I want to say happy anniversary.
Thank you.
For such a long life of love and family and all of that, and congratulations to the new addition and to being that grandmother or grandmom or whichever name that you're going to adopt for yourself. Just a lot of big life events that's happening for you. I'm really excited about that. So thank you so much for being with us on today. One of the big things that I really want us to touch on before we get into your consulting practice is that I really want to talk about your book, which is coming up very soon. That's what I really want us to lead into, and we'll get into more of the conversation a little later. But tell us about We'll Be Right Back. What was the motivation behind this work, and what are some of the main subject matters that readers should look forward to coming up in September?
Thanks for the question, Teresa. So I myself was in the workplace for many years and then took a pause from the workplace and returned. So it's something that I have firsthand experience with. I returned to school for my PhD much later in life than most people do, in my 50s. And I knew I concentrated on psychology and industrial and organizational psychology because I knew I wanted to further explore the experience for women in the workplace in general, but also very specifically that population of women who pause their careers and then come back into the workplace. And it was really through that research that, yes, I was able to understand a lot more about all of our experiences while we're in the workplace and returning. But through the interviews and focus groups that I did, I found that much more beyond the data, it was extremely important to women to be able to tell their story. And in a very important way, to hear their story again for themselves. And then to talk about those steps coming back into the workplace. So the book is divided into a few different parts. The first part of the book is about remembering, is about recalling who you were as in the workplace, whatever line of work you were in, before you took that pause, and kind of remembering the amazing person you were in that role. So what did you enjoy about it? What were your greatest accomplishments? What did you miss about it? All of those questions. And each chapter is structured in a way that it has information about the topic, and then has a little bit of research that backs up the topic and tells you, a little bit more about the studies on that. But then, most importantly, gives examples of other women who have experienced the same thing. And then finally, has reflection questions to bring out that information. So in the first part, as I mentioned, remembering who you were. In the second part of the book, acknowledging the wonderful aspects of being on a pause and what you contributed to, likely your family, your community, and yourself, hopefully, but also the challenges of being on a pause. Some of the topics we don't talk about: grief, isolation, physical, menopause, and the things that you're likely going through if you're at mid-career. So many of those challenges that too often we all think we're alone in. So to bring those to the forefront, and then to talk about the hidden skills that you've developed during your pause. Too many people say, oh, I was just a caregiver. I was just a stay-at-home mom. No, you most certainly were not. You were doing so many things within that role every single day. And so to unpack that and demonstrate those skills that have been developed and honed within that time period. And then in the last part, to be able to articulate that in a way that's going to be meaningful to employers, and to walk through some of the very practical steps necessary if you do want to return to the workplace, and helping people to take the steps, not giant leaps on the first hour, but taking steps that make sense and that get you there in a way that's manageable, and hopefully helping people see just their value and how important they are.
Well, Dr. Peters, I absolutely love that. And I first and foremost want to say thank you so much for creating a space for women to kind of tell this story in a way that's so powerful, and to help them to remember. I want to let's talk about some of the things that you just shared, if that is okay.
Yes.
One of the things that you made mention of is that the first part of the book is really going to be focused on helping women to remember who they were when they were in the workplace. Can you share with us, just based upon your studies, why is it that women, what is it that causes us to forget in the first place? If we do have to take that pause, whether it is grief or motherhood or caregiving, or just maybe just addressing a physical challenge, what makes us forget?
Well, I think initially we've got one foot in each world. Maybe you've experienced, or if you went through this, when I took a step out of the workplace and paused, someone would say, what do you do? And I would say, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, or I'm full time with my children, or something along those lines. And then I would say, but what I used to do, and then I would I would launch into my resume, and I'm sure the person was, kind of standing there thinking that I didn't need quite that much information, but you're not, it's like you don't know who you are exactly, because you've sort of lost that identity, and that identity loss is a big piece of it, Teresa. So you lose that professional identity, and as the months and potentially years go by, that becomes a further and further memory, and you become what you are at the time, right? I mean, your most important role, maybe you're someone's mother, maybe you're acting in the role of a daughter, maybe you're a caregiver for someone who's struggling with an illness, and those qualities overtake what your professional identity was. And the other thing I'll add to that is, it was women's responses when I asked them, tell me about your professional life. we're often, no one's asked me that for years, or no one's ever asked me that, or my kids don't even know what I did, and so we just don't talk about it enough. Also, so you're going to forget, if it's not something that you're thinking about, it becomes that lost identity.
Absolutely. And I can definitely, I think in my own personal life, when I came out of the higher education space in 2021, it was kind of difficult to kind of get my balance shortly after that, but mainly because I attached so much of my identity to my title.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that was probably what the main challenge was. And I think even between now and then, it's been about 5 years, and rebuilding a different part of rebuilding a career or creating a new career for myself. But I guess in your work and talking with the women that you have worked with in your studies, do you come across where you teach women how to separate their identity, to understand who they are as an individual without the title, to understand
Yes.
that you still have to be able to articulate who they are minus the title, and that you're not necessarily bound to your title or what you used to do? Is that part of the part, was that part of the conversations? And if so, what was how do you help women kind of detach that, my role position is not necessarily who I am, and how to be able to articulate exactly who I am and what I am capable of doing? Does that ever come up in your studies?
Most definitely. And that was why I felt it was really important to include reflection exercises, because we need to pause and to actually think about those roles. So, you know, starting with who you were in your professional life, remembering all of those qualities and accomplishments and things that you're proud of, and that lent I guess happiness to your title and to your job. Remembering all of that puts you in the mindset to have a mind shift about who you are now and what you've accomplished and why that's meaningful. And that helps women to recognize who they are as a person. So, for example, you could say, I hear people I've interviewed say all the time, well, I was just a stay-at-home mom, or I am a stay-at-home, and I don't like that word, just a stay-at-home mom. Well, you know what? Let's unpack that. Because you're not. So let's take an average day. You're probably doing time management. You might be doing mediation. You are probably balancing a budget at your home. You're making plans. You're managing schedules. There's so many things that you can do. And that alone, if you're somebody who is also perhaps doing work in the community, maybe volunteering at a school or with a nonprofit, or you sit on a board or something along those lines, most likely you're exercising a lot of talent and skills that lead to who you are, right? So going back to, you're certainly not just a mom. And when you articulate those things that you are meaningfully doing on a day-to-day basis, it helps to build up, I am a mediator, I am a time manager, I am a delegator, I have great management skills, all of those pieces. And often it is, what I have heard too is, transitioning back into the workplace is a huge part of regaining identity, because it really is a true shift from being someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's caretaker, and on and on, to, oh, I'm actually in a role now where I am, it's easier to associate it with yourself personally versus others.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that. And Actually, you were just speaking on this about one of the great benefits of being on a pause is being able to hone and to develop those hidden skills, and learning how to articulate that to employers. And you just gave us a demonstration of how to do it. Would you encourage women who are preparing to go back into the workplace to be able to demonstrate this even on their resumes? Because probably most HR personnel, they'll ask you most times in those interviews if you're going back into the career field, and they'll notice a gap of
Right.
experiments. Would you encourage women to add that to their resumes, that gap, or at least in that time frame of their step
Yes.
away, but being able to detail specifically, this is what I was capable of doing, even while I may have not been with a quote unquote W-2 employer.
Right. Correct.
Yes.
Yes. So, unpaid work is still work.
Hmm.
And we want that to be recognized. And so I absolutely encourage articulating that on your resume. And I give examples of that in my book. I have a number of resources that I refer to help with those transitions. But if someone's looking to build a resume, there's great examples and help for women returning to the workplace or men returning to the workplace on Indeed, on LinkedIn. Those resources are out there now, which is super, super helpful. And I also recommend to people, one of the first things I always say is, if you are a graduate of an institution and that has alumni career services, you're almost always entitled to those services as an alum. Now, it's not just for when you're graduating and you're 18, 22 or 18, however old you are, right? It is available typically to alums. And so I always encourage people to see what kind of free resources they might have or someone who can help them with that as well. But the online resources are really, really terrific in that regard.
Absolutely. And I love that. And that's usually a lot of my guidance as well. If I bump into anyone that was
Yes.
either a fellow alum or even
Yes.
some of the students that I've worked with previously in the
Yes.
higher education, if they're looking at their challenge or they're looking for career advancement, to always revisit their alumni for those type
Yes.
of services. A lot of times they don't know that, or those kind of things. So I'm glad that it's a part of your guidance as well as online resources. I think I'm curious though, but for women, and if you found this in your studies, that as women are stepping back into that career space again, maybe after some time, is there a need where they feel like they might have to prove themselves and they might I don't know what's the word. Overzealous is probably not the word, but how can they step back into the workplace calm and not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, I need to prove myself right away to get back into the swing of things, still approach walk in powerful and all of that, but not necessarily feel like, oh, I got to prove myself or I got to make up for lost time. Do you
Right.
find that women have had some of those challenges? And if so, what has been your guidance to kind of help them to relax and to step back into this flow naturally and still be amazing? What has been your finding with some of the women you've worked with?
Teresa, I always counsel people to be themselves and you know put your best foot forward in your interview and in your resume. And if you've been selected for a position, there's a reason, right? And of course you want to put your best foot forward. And for most people that does mean going in and working hard. But what you're talking about is maybe, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're talking about is the pressure we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
That, okay, well, in 6 months I need to be at the next level, and in a year from now I haven't succeeded if I'm not making X dollars more. Those kinds of internal pressures. And I think it's more of the take one step at a time. And what happens is, my experience is that women were generally superstars in their professions before they took the pause. Then they paused and they were superstars during their pause in whatever role they had, plus usually also in their community and with other neighbors and so on, not just community like organizations, but often in those ways. And when they get back into the workplace, guess what? They're a superstar again there too. And sometimes it does take a little bit of time to get your feet back under you and to gain that confidence back. I recall a very accomplished woman. She had owned her own advertising agency, a small agency, talking about going back to work. And she went back to work at a small nonprofit, and she had been out for a long time. And she went in and she said, the first thing that somebody asked her to do was make a copy. And she said she was like, gosh, I don't even know where the copy room is. I don't know, like it all kind of came flooding over her. And she said, and it was the simplest task, right? But that was the first hour of the first day. And then the great end to the story is, of course, she settled in and she became very, very good at the first job they hired her to do, and then went on, of course, to be promoted within that organization. So I think just being yourself and trying to take at least the first month day by day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think maybe one more question that I have before we move forward, and thank you so much for being so generous about sharing with us about what's coming up in September with your new book. We'll be right back. My other question that I'm curious about is that the women that you have worked with and the stories that they have told, have they ever shared with you the fight about who they were versus who they are now? And how were they able to resolve that conflict? And I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you an example, and maybe this is probably a good example. I remember there was a position that I had taken on some years ago, and I remember, the people I was going to be working for, or at least my leadership at the time, it was like, "Oh, we've heard so much about you, and you're going to be amazing at this job." Da, 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 da. And just going down the list, and I became intimidated by my own reputation. I don't know how that was possible because
Sure.
it was like I was so intimidated by what they had heard about me. And not to say
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't true, it was absolutely true. But I think being confronted with myself kind of intimidated me a little bit, that can I even live up to this? So have you found, and maybe not necessarily in that same context, but working with women who have been in this pause, but they're going back into the workplace, do they find themselves in conflict with who I used to be in the workplace versus who I am now and what I need to be right now?
Yes. Yes. And it is generally categorized as imposter syndrome,
Yes.
where, right? I mean, it's probably something you've heard about and read about. Many people have at this point, but the most accomplished men and women, both men and women, not just women, experience this, where others are touting your accolades, or you're reading your own accomplishments, and you still have that imposter syndrome. So there's that piece of it. But then on the other side of that, women's values change. Everyone's values change, right? There's a theoretical model for careers called the kaleidoscope career model. And it examines men and women's, focus, which is why it's called the kaleidoscope career model, their focus on authenticity, balance, and challenge throughout their career, early career, mid-career, and late career. And at early career, men and women are both very focused on challenge. That's the main focus. But by mid-career, women shift to a focus on balance and authenticity. So one of the things that I found that actually is reflective of that, in fact, is that one of the questions I asked was, you didn't go back to your, many women don't go back to their original career sector. And in my case, my participants had not. They had chosen a nonprofit route. And I asked them, did you choose the nonprofit route because you felt like you couldn't go back to your former career sector? You wouldn't be able to get back in, or you didn't want to? You had a philosophical change. And the vast majority had a philosophical change in what they wanted to do for work. So they looked back at that professional self, and this was another important piece about saying, who was I in that role? They looked back and they said, I am proud of the accomplishments, but I no longer want that particular career sector, and I no longer want 60-hour work weeks and traveling. And I want work that is reflective of my personal values, that feels authentic to me, the mission aligns, and is balanced with my life. And so I think it's really twofold. I think we can be paralyzed a little bit by imposter syndrome when we are going back into similar roles where people are referencing who we were in that previous professional life. And I think there's often a real acknowledgement, a healthy acknowledgement that maybe who you were before is not who you want to be now. You're shifting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that. I would just have to say, Dr. Peters, and I don't know if in full transparency, I don't know if I destroyed a moment that I had on yesterday. If maybe you could tell me from your place of expertise. I had a meeting on yesterday that was arranged more so for a career opportunity to go into an industry that I really hadn't been in over 20 years. And so I took the meeting because it was an opportunity. I looked at it as an opportunity, but I already knew that it wasn't necessarily aligned with who I was. And while the meeting was just really just that, just a meeting, I found myself bringing along information about not only my resume, but also the executive summary of the work that I do today. And
Right.
while I was there to talk about maybe a career opportunity with this particular organization and with this person, I had to take at least two minutes at the end to say, what I'm really passionate about. Here's what I'm passionate about right now. And if it's not out of order, I would like to give you my executive summary to kind of shine a light on the work that I'm doing right now that is in alignment with leadership development. Um, I don't know if that was just me taking a moment for myself, but I really honestly felt like I'm like, this is where my heart is right now. And I don't know how that looks in front of people. And I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. I guess looking back on that, for anyone that might find themselves in that position, was that appropriate or should I have done that differently?
Well, I think when you're characterizing it as a meeting, I think it is appropriate. And I think if that's what you're passionate about right now, it sounds to me like you brought that up because you had the realization probably in advance of the meeting. And then during the meeting, as you were talking about the previous experience that you had that related to the current organization you were talking to, that wasn't your passion anymore. So, if you really wanted a job with an organization that has nothing to do with your passions, and you're going to do that type of work more on the side than as your career, then I would encourage people to focus on what the organization is actually, hiring for those skills. However, in the case that this was not an interview and it was a meeting, I think it was perfectly fine for you to do that, because you also don't know. It doesn't sound like that was really an opportunity you were ultimately interested in having. And also, by sharing honestly, perhaps the person that you were talking to may have somebody that they will connect you with, that is related to the things that you're passionate about. So I think at the end of the day, it's never a bad idea to take meetings and to go to interviews and to practice and hear yourself talk out loud, because I'm going to ask you a question now. Did you learn something?
Absolutely. I mean, I was very gracious for the meeting, but I think I also knew initially um, that this is not necessarily in align with me. But if there's
Yes.
an opportunity that is presented, I would consider it.
Yes.
But I also knew that there was also an opportunity for leadership development, whether it was directly for the person I was speaking with, which was in a leadership position, and understanding that they were also a leader in the niche that I serve. So, but also wanted to say, hey, but even if your organization is looking for a leadership development for their senior leaders or their emerging leaders,
Yes.
this can also serve this particular purpose. And so I'm glad it was not an interview, and I'm thankful it wasn't. That wasn't. I know better if it was an interview, but because it was a meeting, um, that is what I learned. At least what I learned is that I took a shot there, and
Yes.
I presented myself
Exactly.
as a professional, and not allowing it to consume a huge amount of our conversation, but it was maybe the last 2-3 minutes of our conversation, and to leave something with them to review and a way to follow up with me. And so, I wanted to still make my mother and father proud, understand why I took the meeting. But I also understood that this is also opportunity to shoot my shot. So
Yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
I'm at least going to take 2 minutes to do that, even if it's a small amount of the time of this conversation while I have this audience.
I think that was a brilliant idea, Teresa. I think that was absolutely appropriate and a great idea, given the context of the meeting.
Yes, well, thank you so much. So I am so excited about your book, and we're definitely looking forward to it. As we continue on in our conversation, because we're going to get into AMP consulting in just 1 second. But I want you to talk to the women as well as the men. Statistically, from I don't know if the numbers have increased or decreased, but some of the most recent statistics is that about 3.4 million women here in the United States are currently in the job market looking for work. A huge amount of that is women of color as well as women of age and those kind of things. And a lot of times they're in the job market because it wasn't necessarily voluntary.
Yes.
It wasn't a voluntary move. And it could have been as a result of some policy changes,
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. For women as well as men that might be in this situation, what would be your guidance for them to take this moment that may have been unfortunate, but to reframe it, this pause, that it it may be a blessing, it may be something that they may have been asking for unconsciously, and they're blessed with this opportunity. How would they and maybe they don't feel blessed, and maybe they do, and maybe they don't. But how can they reframe this moment, this career pause, and start preparing themselves either for the next career adventure or even a step into the entrepreneurial space? How can they start preparing themselves for their next moment?
Yes, that's a great question. I think, first of all, really knowing what it is that you're looking for. And there are some very practical considerations, right? I mean, if you're in a position where you need X amount of income in order to meet your expenses and stay in your home and be able to provide groceries and so on, that's something where it's obviously a much more urgent um, um, situation that somebody needs to get out into the workplace. And so in those cases, the choices are going to could very possibly be limited because the time is very important. The timing is to be able to get back, and that's obvious, get back into a salary. Um, but if someone has the benefit of having a little bit of time, I think making sure that you really take a step back and think about what was it that that made you, that you enjoyed about what you did before, and can that be applied more widely than just in the organization or career sector that were in before? Can you think about it, how it might fit in another type of organization so that you can broaden your search parameters? I think also, I mean, if you're thinking about philosophically, I think it's important to gather that information so that you know in your heart what ultimately you would like to do. Now, I'll tell you from a personal experience of someone that I was coaching who was in this position, a non-voluntary pause, um, and was not in the position that they had a lot of time to find another situation, but had a really great goal to start their own business. And so what we talked about was um, the very first job that you get when you're coming off of a pause, or in some cases, maybe you're, a younger person who's looking for their first job. It's not the last job, right? So in some cases, you have to maybe take one or two things off the ideal list. And if you're in that position that you have to get something right now, but what you need to do is continue to identify where you want to be and then work toward that while you have the comfort of a paycheck that's going to get you to the next month. Now, obviously, if you're somebody who maybe was, maybe you were in a position where you received severance and you have enough funding that you can take some time. I think it's very wise to evaluate again those values that you have and where you see yourself, and start targeting your search in that direction. So it might be a complete shift from what you did before, maybe something completely new. And in a lot of cases, you might be able to get experience with that before jumping in to whether it's asking someone that you know to have coffee with you to tell you about their experience in that industry or that organization. But doing that networking that gets you the information directly from other people, and then dipping your toe in the water if you can do that, if you have the luxury of that time. But so many people relate that what appeared initially as a real blow to their career, whether it was retirement, whether it was a layoff, ended up pointing them really toward their North Star and to the next their next chapter. So yes, you're closing a chapter, but don't be afraid to open that next chapter, and it's waiting out there for you.
I love that. Don't be afraid of that next chapter. I love that, love that, love that. Well, Dr. Peters, you've been educating us, and thank you so much for really helping us to understand the work that you're getting ready to release in your book and just giving us more insight about your expertise. So take us behind the curtain of AMP Consulting. Let's get to the business to AMP Consulting, and you may have already been sharing some of what you do. But take us behind the curtain as far as AMP Consulting. What was your motivation for creating this space to be able to help women to reframe their career pauses, as well as the kind of woman that you like to work with, as far and what your services look like? So kind of take us behind the curtain of AMP Consulting and what would it look like to work along with you?
So AMP Consulting is really two arms. So there's the consulting arm that is about strategic direction with organizations and individuals as well, but really solving a business problem. And then there's the coaching part of AMP Consulting, which is working with men and women. But, you know, as you can hear, my passion is working with women who are shifting from a pause or from a former career to something new. And so typically what I like to do is have a little one-on-one and get to know somebody just a little bit and what their goals are and what they're hoping to achieve. And then we set up a series. We start with a series of 4 sessions to reach their goals. So, you know, obviously the client's goals are the most important thing to get to that next step. And I utilize my experience in the corporate world for the strategy part of it, and certainly a lot of the management skills that I learned in those roles over the many years that I was in corporate organizations. But then the business that I started when I transitioned from my pause was called Interview Savvy. So Interview Savvy was really designed to help people to discover their talents and their stories that are best articulated to an employer to talk about why they would be a good employee. So I feel like the tools that I have and the experience that I have is very helpful in helping people to see themselves and for helping them to see that somebody else sees them too. I see you. I see you. I can see the hard work that you've done. I can see the potential that you have, even if you can't. And I'm going to help you see it if that's the situation. And then positioning them for success. And whether the end goal is to get a position, you know, another job, or whether the end goal is, you know, to just decide what's next. Either way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And thank you so much for the work that you do. I do have another question has come up for me. Let's say you've worked with a woman, you all have had that one-on-one, you've had the goals, you provided the strategy, we went through the interview savvy, all of that. The woman gets the job, she's working the job, and then it hits her, this is not it.
Right.
This is just not it.
Yes.
What courage would you give to a woman to, I guess, finally to admit that? Because, you know, some people feel like because I've gone through all of these steps, I should feel more grateful, or I just need to stay here and things like that. But it's just not meshing. even if the money is well, the benefits are well, and all of that. But as we talked about earlier, it's just not aligning anymore. What would you give to those women to, I guess, to free themselves from that, to understand that, yes, I went through these steps, but this is still not meshing? What would you say to
Right.
them?
I would say it's not jail. You're not stuck, but we make ourselves feel like it is, right? We've put it out on LinkedIn. We've told all our friends. We were excited about it. We thought it was going to be the thing. And to your point, then you get there and it's just not. And it's hard because you feel like, gosh, why isn't it? And is it, I think a lot of times women end up saying, oh, it must be me, right? But it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that it's not the right fit. And generally, I advise that go ahead and just acknowledge it's not the right fit, but keep doing great work in that position while you're figuring out what the right fit might be, and then work toward that right fit. And we can, it's also an opportunity to go back and revisit the goals if it's not meeting the goals that you had set out, and maybe changing the goals. Maybe you realize that it's not, maybe the job met the goals you listed, but the goals you listed weren't really what feeds your passion. And then it requires changing those a little bit. But it's admitting that it's okay. It's okay to make a mistake, or and not even a mistake. I don't like to characterize it that way. It's okay to jump into something that looks good on paper and figure out it's just not for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Leaders, thank you for listening to this episode of the Women's Leadership Mindset series. I would like to take a moment to share a special announcement with you. Listen, we're living in extraordinary times, and it's up to us, the people, the leaders, the entrepreneurs, and the like, to tap into our ingenuity, to revive confidence and sound leadership, to produce goods and services that will bring relief to the challenges hitting our nations, to reduce unemployment rates exacerbated by the dismantling of DEI or the rise of AI, and to revitalize the global economy by leveling up the generation of wealth among the general population. But before we can confront these systematic matters head on, we must be reminded of the mandate and who we are as natural born leaders, and that leadership is not something to do or dictate, but an expressed demonstration of love. Therefore, I am excited to introduce Love the Success Factor Leadership Incubator. This is a premium transformational leadership development designed to elevate the leadership authority, innovation, and cultural impact of your organization's senior and emerging leaders. So, if your organization is ready to take the lid off your leaders' capacity to affect change within our communities, domain of industry, and global economy, I invite you to see the bio to request a consultation. For now is the time to lead differently and to lead with love. Now, back to our episode. Well, Dr. Peters, it's been such an honor to spend some time with you as we prepare this downshift in our conversation. Um, One of the things that I love to ask all of my guests is that, as we were having our one-on-one, I believe that what you learned about me is that I'm passionate about employing love as that ultimate success factor, to renew women's as well as transformational leaders' mindset with fresh fire and purpose. And so with that, I honestly and truly believe that the effective power of love is a game changer. And I think the work that you're doing is helping women to rediscover themselves after a pause. That is a function of love. That is a gift of love. And so understanding that love is that game changer. that gives us an edge to be innovative in business or fully present for our teams, knowledgeable about industry trends, or benevolent in our community service. In addition, is understanding that love is a game changer, even when we do have to make a pause to give our lives over to our children or to an aging parent or even to take care of ourselves, self-care.
Yes.
Um, but above all, love is that game changer to help us to be powerful in leadership. So with understanding all of these things that I truly believe in about love, what would you say, how would you define yourself as a leader? What kind of leader would you say that you are? And how has love tangibly shaped you as this leader that you believe that you are?
I think that treating other people with respect, which starts with being a really good listener and really listening for what they're saying and what they're not saying, is very, very important as a leader. So number one is loving people enough to treat them with respect and to acknowledge what they bring to the organization. And to do that, I think we underestimate and underplay acknowledgement, telling people, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate you, and so on, more often than just at performance appraisal time. So I think that that is very important as a leader and as a manager. And work with women who are returning to the workplace who often have that identity loss that we discussed early on in our conversation. I think love means um, letting people know that they're seen and that they're not alone in their journey, and that I care and there's many others who care about being on that journey with them and getting to that next chapter.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, how would you like future generations to benefit from the work that you're doing today?
I would really want employers to evolve to have a greater appreciation for women in the workplace and for mothers in the workplace. I think that we've made some progress over the last several decades, but certainly not the vision that was there, let's say back in the 70s. So to accelerate um, the uh, equality for women in the workplace and environments that are conducive to the fact that only women can be moms, while many of us can be caregivers. That is very typically something that happens throughout someone's career, and to be more mindful of supporting employees in that role as well as the role in their organization, and that both can be done very, very well. And it's been proven by many organizations that that's very doable. And I just hope that more employers start to make that a reality for women.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, as we prepare to wrap up, I know we've been wrapping up for a second here, but you know what? I get three opportunities to prepare to close. I always give myself that. So, um, final tips, though, for those, and you've been giving us tips for throughout our entire conversations on how to be able to reframe the pause for those of us who might be in a pause and who are preparing for their next big career adventure or entrepreneurial adventure. But what tip, what encouragement or resource would you give to someone that may be listening that there is either a dream career or a dream business a dream career they're looking to step into, or a dream business that they're ready to start. But they just haven't taken that leap of faith to turn that dream into a reality. Based upon your expertise or even experience, or both, what tip, what encouragement or resource would you give to someone to go ahead and take that leap?
I would say, confidence is a muscle we need to exercise. You can't wait. If you wait till you feel like, okay, I'm 110% confident in this leap that I want to make, you might wait a long time. You have to evaluate where you are, and at some point you gotta pull the trigger. So you have to take action. But what I would say is, to build to that point, if you're someone who's not quite at that point yet, take small steps. Take small steps to get toward that next goal. And the more small steps that you stack together, the more confident that you will be, and the more likely it is that you will feel like you can make that leap.
Absolutely. Now, what about those who've already taken the leap? They're living the dream, but they're feeling a little frustrated. They're feeling a little bit stuck with either this career or this business that they're starting. What would you give to them? What tip, what encouragement or resource would you help them to get over whatever barrier that they need to cross over?
Yes, and I think the first and most important thing is to identify what it is. So it's probably not the whole business. It's probably not the whole job. It's probably something within that. And identifying it, whether it's one thing or three things or however many things that are maybe causing frustration or diminishing the dream, if you will, identifying it is the important first step. Once those aspects are identified, then you're going to have to make a decision. Are these things that are an annoyance, or are these game changers that I can't live with? And then the second step to that is it worth trying to fix this concern, or is it something I need to just live with? So I think, really just breaking it down into, the why behind the frustration, and if it's possible to change, and then coming up with a plan to change it, if it is possible to change it. And there can always be a
Absolutely.
shift. I think too, with entrepreneurs, um, I'll use Interview Savvy as an example. Our vision for what that business was going to be shifted because of the marketplace. And you can also shift that entrepreneurial venture or the new position that you have, not because of a shift in the marketplace, but maybe a shift in your own ideals. And you have to roll with that.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And thank you so much for giving us a little bit of giving us some wisdom there. I liked what you first mentioned about confidence is a muscle we need to exercise. I love that that quote there. So, Dr. Peters, I tell you, it has been such an honor to have this conversation with you on today. I want to thank you for giving a voice to women who are in a career pause and helping them to understand or to reframe it, that, you know, possibly this pause was necessary. I think oftentimes we it may not, whether it's voluntary or if it's not voluntary, that the pause could actually be a gift. And so, but also thank you so much for helping women to prepare themselves to step back into their greatness in that form of a career or either or a business. So we're really excited about the book that's coming up very soon in September. We hope to be able to share more information or even to bring you back when the book releases and all that kind of great stuff. But as we prepare to go home, what are your final words that you would like to leave us that will carry us forward from today throughout the remainder of 2026 and beyond?
Um, your career might have paused, but your success never did. So um, keep remembering the great person that you are, and look at your former chapters with fondness, and look forward to the new chapters with excitement, because there is so much growth yet to come.
Absolutely. Did you hear that, audience? There's so much growth that's yet to come. Well, thank you, Dr. Peters. It was such an honor to have you on today.
Thank you, Teresa. It's been my honor to get to talk with you today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we want to say thank you for joining us. Remember, you can connect with Dr. Peters by visiting her website at www.annemariepeters.com. You may also email her at amp@annemariepeters.com. And don't forget to connect with her on social media via LinkedIn at Anne Marie Peters. And stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned, everyone, for her new book that's coming up. We'll be right back. That will be available on September the 16th on Amazon, as well as online book platforms. And stay tuned for it also to be on the shelves in bookstores as well. So we're going to put a special link in the bio so you could be notified on how to take advantage of any upcoming pre-sale promotions. Now, leaders, do you have an important story to tell that would inspire others to step into their dream career or business? If so, check the bio to learn how to become one of my special guests. So we want to say thank you for joining in for another episode of the Women's Leadership Mindset series. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, here's to the journey, and let's move forward.